Hey guys, 707 back again. Hey, we got part 3 this week. Um, so this week we are actually going to talk about a couple different manufacturers um, that I actually have written down just so I have my side notes so I don't forget anything. I may not have everything, but I've just been using side notes. But the first one I'd like to bring up is Honda. Now, I have a lot of respect for Honda. Same thing with Toyota. They are freaking cars that just never die. Doesn't matter what the hell you do to them. You could literally drain your oil and they'll still drive. Like, I don't know how they managed, but it works great for them. But the first set of cars I'd like to bring up for Honda is the Accord and the Honda Civic. Now, I put them both in the same category due to the fact that they pretty much have the same problems. Now, most people, at least with the older cars, for some reason don't like them the way they are. Now, Accord and Civic have a pretty bad racer. What am I looking for? Stereotype. That's what I'm looking for. They have more of a racer stereotype. There are also these people that like to try to race them.
You said racer, by the way.
Right, that's the point.
It's racer.
It's racer. You want to know why?
Sure.
Because their most common problem, their exhaust problems. They're notorious for them. The problem is they like to rot. And they will rot. And they will rot. And they'll rot again. And guess what? When you're done replacing it, they'll rot again. They just have problems with their exhaust systems. That also includes their cats. Now, as you could probably tell, catalytic converters, or CATs for short, can be pretty pricey. A lot of people have been having issues with people cutting them off and trying to sell them for quick cash. Yes, they can be worth a lot of money. No, do not cut somebody else's cat off. It is a freaking felony. It is against the law. You're vandalizing property. I mean, do I really have to spell this out? I mean, there's a lot of red flags for trying to do such. Especially when they go bad anyway. Now, the factory cats on these cars are worth something. Any aftermarket cat you put on a car isn't worth shit. They are not made the same. They are not built the same. Therefore, they're not worth the same. Make sense? They're worth next to pennies. So, for the people who think it's a great idea, oh, this car has cats, let's cut them off. And they take them to the scrapyard and they get like $5 for both cats because they're aftermarket bullshit. Joke's on you. It took you more time than 5 minutes to go and cut them off than it did for the $5 you made at the scrapyard. Way to go, jackass! Now, also with these cars specifically, for some reason, and I can't say for all, again, but especially for the older ones, they just really like the check engine light. They just really like it. Now, they're typically on for a couple different things. They could be on for the cats, they could be on for O2 sensors. Typically, it's an evap leak of some sort. Now, no matter what you do, 90% of the time, it'll come right back on. Why? I don't know. It's just a Honda thing, I guess. But yeah, they're not terrible cars. They're nice little 4-cylinders. They're cheap, good beginner car, especially for a new driver. So they're not all bad. You know, they're pretty cheap to fix, pretty cheap to work on, so on and so forth. But again, they do still have their downfalls. Again, the exhaust system is pretty much where that starts going in, along with the check engine light. Now, the problem is when the check engine light comes on, you can no longer pass your emissions test. And when you have a car that's notorious for the check engine light to be on, and it becomes a problem. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I mean, that is what it is. Now, there's also another one. It's a car. It's called a CRV, the Honda CRV. They're pretty nice. They're smaller size SUVs. They're pretty cheap, honestly. They're pretty nice, but they do have a very big problem of the undercarriage rotting out. Now, I've seen a lot of Hondas that are also notorious for oil leaks when it comes to their valve covers. But again, it's kind of a normal thing for cars. But these are more earlier than normal, I guess. They usually start to like to leak oil around the 50,000 to 60,000 mile mark. Again, it's not every one. But again, they're pretty cheap, pretty easy to work on, and what's nice is they're also 4-wheel or all-wheel drive, depending on what style you get. So they're actually pretty good for the winter too. Now, going back to my part 1 video, is a vehicle that they call the Honda Ridgeline. Now, Honda Ridgeline looks very, very similar to a Chevy Avalanche. Tell me I'm wrong. Now, the problem that I run with that is, again, it looks like a truck. It wants to be a truck, but it can't do truck things. I don't get it. It literally has no towing capabilities. So if you're looking for a bling bling, I own a truck, then there you go. The truck's for you. But you ain't pulling much with it. So you better hope it fits in the bed, because that's about all you're pulling. And if you're whereas what some people like to call the pavement princess, these are not the vehicles for you. You do not do what people like to call dubbing them, which is slang for pulling off the factory wheels and tires, putting way oversized rims on it, and putting paper tires on it, as I like to call them, meaning the sidewall's this thick. If you're gonna buy a truck, don't be dumb. It is the dumbest thing. It's so much easier to bend the rims, and this goes for any car. It's so much easier to bend the rims when you have tires yay thick. Right. I don't understand why they even made the Ridgeline. I don't even understand why they made the Avalanche. But they're both about the same thing, to be honest with you. Now, the next manufacturer I'd like to bring up, which is just real basic, is Mitsubishi. Now, Mitsubishi is a pretty good manufacturer. They usually run pretty decent. Honestly, they usually have a very good reputation. But the one thing that they're notorious for are their oil leaks, which is very easy to fix. Now, Mitsubishi specifically, which also goes for Nissan, by the way, both require, when doing an oil change, to change out the gasket around your oil drain plug. Now, the reason behind that is because they're a one-time use gasket. Now, the problem is a lot of people don't, which isn't all bad, but it can leak. Now, when it leaks right out from where the gasket should seal. Now, when you get the new ones, they're usually not as flat, so when you go to torque them down or tighten them up, the gasket is designed to squeeze together and make a seal with your oil pan and your drain plug. Again, do you have to? No. Is it recommended? Yes. Does the manufacturer tell you to do it? Yes. Again, do you have to? No. But if you lose oil, it's your fault. It's the only way to put it. Especially if you're a DIYer. Now, with that being said, this is my next favorite manufacturer to rage on. Now, Jeep. Oh, holy Jeep. Everybody loves the Jeeps, right? Yeah, it's that car, right? I want that car. You know, they're great off-road. They're great in the winter, right? Everything's good, right? Yeah, wrong. Jeeps are fucking horrible. They're terrible. Seriously. So, there's a good example. The Jeep Compass. Now, they're smaller cars. They're not bad. But they have a 2.4-liter engine in them. Not all of them, but most of them. Which is their bigger engine package. It's supposed to have a little more horsepower. Well, if you recall from one of my other videos, 2.4s are very notorious for one problem. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a Compass come into the dealer for an engine. Doesn't make sense to me either. Now, you have another one. It's same size family, I should say, when it comes to Jeep. Is their Jeep Renegade. Now, they're not horrible. Not really my cup of tea when it comes to any Jeep, per se. At least if I had to buy one. But they do have a lot of electrical issues. When I say that, I mean everything electrical somehow, some shape, some form communicates to the radio. Now, the radios have a lot of problems. There's not really a radio specifically when it comes to size or part number or nothing like that. It's just for some reason the Renegade radios are just garbage. They like to short out internally. Another good common thing is if you open up your navigation, you hit view map. Sometimes you could be sitting in another state. Sometimes you could be literally sitting in the middle of the fucking ocean. It won't be accurate. Now, yes, you could take it to the dealer. 90% of the time there's going to be a flash for it. You could flash it. It'll work. But the problem is it ain't going to work forever. So at the end of the day, you end up replacing the radio anyway. Which is something you're going to have to go to the dealer for. Or your only backup would be to go to the junkyard, find another radio, the exact same style of radio, and get the VIN number from it. Then call the manufacturer, give them the VIN number so they can find what they call the anti-theft code, so you can put it in your replacement radio when you hook it back into your vehicle. Without that code, nothing's going to work. So regardless, the dealer has to get involved. And of course, they're very good for oil consumption, again with the 2.4. Now, here's the cars that I enjoy a little too much. The Cherokees and the Grand Cherokees. They're very similar, so I'm combining the two together. Now, these vehicles specifically, for some oddball reason, for the 8-inch screens more specifically, their radios like to have issues. Again, a lot of navigation problems. Sometimes the backup camera doesn't work. Sometimes the radio knob just kind of jumps whenever the hell it wants to, regardless if you touch it or not. Excuse me. Yeah. So, needless to say, the radios are pretty much just as lousy as the Renegades. Now, the one issue that I've also noticed with these cars specifically is more specific to the model year of 2019. Why? I don't know. But the best way to figure out if your car is doing this particular thing is go into a parking lot or a place that you can do a real sharp corner. And you want to take the steering wheel and turn it all the way. Doesn't matter if it's left or right, could be both sides. I would do it either way, just so you know. And what you want to do is you want to give it just a little bit of gas, like if you're just going to corner, like you're pulling out from a stop sign at a T intersection. Now, the problem that you run into is what will feel like the rear end locking up. Now, this is normal, not really. So, can you fix it? Yeah. How? I'm glad you asked. Now, the only way to fix that is to replace the whole rear end. Can you? Yeah. Is it worth it? No. Why, may you ask? I'm glad you asked. Thank you. Now, you very much can replace it, but the problem that you'll run into after replacing is give it about 5,000-10,000 miles and do it again. You're probably going to have that very same problem all over again. I don't know why they do it. The manufacturer don't even know why it does it. They just do it. Now, I was suggested, which I've never tried, so don't quote me if this works, but I've suggested to put different fluid in the vehicle. Meaning, instead of putting in the typical Chrysler fluid that they recommend into your rear end, and when I say rear, don't take it wrong, but they suggested to try the GM limited slip additive in the fluid to see if that helps at all. Now, again, have I tried it? No. Do I know it works? No. I also don't drive one, so I'm not trying it. But again, it is something you could try. You know, it'd be very intriguing if it does work. You could definitely leave a comment below and let me know if it does work, if this is something you'd be willing to try. Now, I do have another problem with these cars specifically, and it's for the batteries. Yes, you heard me right. Batteries. 2. Now, these cars have, especially the newer ones, I should say, have 2 batteries in them. One is what they call the main battery, and the second one is what they call the auxiliary. If you talk to a mechanic, they probably will call it the auxiliary or the stop-start battery. Now, if your vehicle is one of those ones where when you pull up to a red light or a stop sign or something, you sit there for a few minutes, that your car just shuts off, and then when you go and let off the brake, that your car starts right back up, that's what they call the stop-start system. What it does is it prevents you from burning excess fuel when you're sitting there and not moving, and just in a nice way of putting it, idling. Now, it will not do this if you're in park. There's a reason behind that. What it is, I don't know. But there's some kind of reason why it doesn't do it in park. But it is a very big issue. They have a lot of problems with the stop-start specifically because of the fact that one battery operates another battery. They work together. So, typically, if you do drive a Cherokee or Grand Cherokee, and you do have the double battery system, if you're replacing one battery, you should replace the other. They work as a team. It's kind of like, changing tires. The average person on a four-wheel drive system doesn't replace just a tire. They usually replace a minimum of 2 on the same axle. It doesn't fuck up your drivability that way. Now, I do want to get into one of the most desired Jeeps, I should say, especially when it comes to the off-roading industry, which would be what I lump together, the Jeep Gladiator and your Jeep Wrangler. Now, literally, if you ask me my opinion, the Gladiator is literally a Jeep Wrangler with a small truck bed. That's it. There's not much difference. Literally. Now, they are notorious for electrical. Again. Now, a big issue that they seem to run into is and this is something I have come across, is if you replace your main battery and your stop-start battery, right? Because again, these are one of those vehicles that have both. If you replace them both, you start your vehicle, so on and so forth, but you're getting a message on your display that says stop-start enabled, or disabled, or stop-start isn't working, or something on those lines. Typically, it's usually a battery issue. Now, what you can do is if you check your stop-start battery, you will probably have a problem where your stop-start battery is dead. It is completely wiped clean. There's no power, there's no nothing, but your main battery is good. The first thing you want to look at is underneath your hood, attached to the fuse box, is a metal rail, and it's got a bunch of little like studs that are sticking out of it, and sometimes there's like 3+ cables on it, sometimes there's not. What you want to do is replace it. Now, most of the time, the issue lies internally in that metal piece. Now, when you do that, everything will be fine. You just have to remember that you have to disconnect the negative side on both batteries first. It is very important. Both batteries, or you will blow one of them up. You will spark off something. You will blow a computer. Something on those lines. You do not want to do it. You also, when hooking up the batteries, you want to do the stop-start battery completely hooked up first. Then put the negative side on the main battery. Otherwise, if you don't, you will arc, and you could also blow that same part. They kind of go hand in hand. They work together. Now, as most people would like to create the meme of, is what they like to call the Jeep death wobble. Now, that can be easily fixed, and it's not that hard to do. Now, what I would recommend is if you look underneath the front of your vehicle, more specifically, let's talk about the Wranglers. If you look underneath the front of your Wrangler, and you look at your steering components, it'll look like there's almost a shock, like a suspension shock, in your steering linkage. If you remove that shock, and you put in a performance one, regardless if it's off-road, like a rough country or something on those lines, and you put that in there, it'll actually work a lot easier for you. You actually will have less of a chance of what they call Jeep death wobble. Now, Jeep death wobble is when you're driving down the road, right? And you're holding the steering wheel and you're just kind of cruising, and as you pick up speed, all of a sudden the steering wheel starts doing this, your front wheels start doing this, and they go all over the place, and you seem like you're losing control. That's what they call Jeep death wobble. If that is something you're experiencing, I would definitely try to recommend a performance shock for your steering linkages, which is something, again, you can really get from anywhere, but I definitely wouldn't replace it with a factory one. They've had a lot of issues with it. They don't have the same compression as the performance ones, which is why they would last longer. They also have a problem with oversized tires that people love throwing on them. Well, the problem with that is the car physically doesn't weigh enough to be throwing 35s under that damn thing. Physically. Which, the problem with that is what they call cupping or chopping tires. Now, when you're driving and you look at your tires, usually they're nice and round. But the problem is you'll see a high spot, low spot, high spot, low spot, high spot, low spot, all the way around your tire. And that's because the suspension isn't stiff enough to be able to keep enough tension on it, and the vehicle doesn't weigh enough to push the suspension all the way down to keep the tire completely on the ground at all times. So in theory, you're actually driving on only about 50% of your tire. Why people put oversized shit on their car, I don't know. Especially if it's not made for it. That's something people should be doing research on before they just go and throw thousands of dollars worth of stuff in their Wrangler and then can't figure out why they're going through tires every 6 months. That's why. Another big thing, more downfalls I should say for them, is their soft tops. They like to tear easily. Their window stitching that goes into their soft tops like to fall out. Because again, the stitching gets weak with the weathering and everything else like that. They have a lot of radio issues as well, and they're very top heavy. So lifting a Wrangler is just going to raise your center of gravity more and make it even harder to keep stability. Again, is there ways to fix it? Yes. But there's also ways to do it properly. But that's going to summarize this video. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment down below. And again, appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you.